18 laps to go.
One of those who was due to be right at the hub of things there, and just off the back of that leading good one, it's Vivian Chariot. He's just down the shops. He's wearing a blue kit. Just 4 or 5 metres behind.
So through the
Finished gantry with 18 to go.
the second lap, placed by Evan Chier.
Lost 1-2, they've upgraded themselves to
the
second placing group.
Yes, 218.5 to 219.
So pretty ambitious.
Third group headed by Susan Crommins of Netherlands. And the fourth group coming through now is the Olympic qualifying standard group for around the world, not just for British athletes. Vinny Nesbitt's in the red there. Looks as though everybody got the memo about the shoes, Chris.
What shoes people are going to be wearing?
Start moving to the individual groups tables, and of course this is going to be a new experience for a few as well. Often with the individual tables and also individual toilets as well today.
Independence to wear as well. Often in women's marathon in particular, the athletes have invested so much time and effort in these drinks bottles that they're almost superstitious about having to get every one of them. Sometimes you need a stop, like lunch, or even turn or stop and go back to get their personal drinks bottle.
And it can often be the key point in the race. Caught everybody else. It's getting a bit more opposite to this.
It's pretty much did everything they could to make sure they use every single drink station, ice power station they could in those midnight marathons in the very, very sticky conditions in which Ruth Chepngetich, the world champion, came out on top, and we'll be finding things the other end of the scale today.
Yeah, a bit different. You can see from that great aerial BBC shot the groups just separated by the appropriate distance, social distancing between groups. They've all been in that bubble in the athlete hotel since almost last weekend for some of the early arrivals. Alex McColgan has come from Doha to here. She ran in the final Diamond League event. She ran 800 metres in Stretford a couple of weeks ago, full contrast in distances and weather conditions.
She's from Manchester, so she won't. One or two athletes, I suspect Jenny Nesbitt included, are getting a feel of the London Marathon occasion before their debut. Hamish McColgan has said that she plans to run the long distance in 2022.
First time London Marathon marathoners include Steph 12, although it's her third race over the distance. And it looks as though the pace is just over up a little bit, haven't they? Partridge, Steph 12, Ribeiro, Ali Dixon, red hat and the red singlet alongside there.
Whole new psychology, of course, for these athletes with the Lucas course and the fact that lap number said 19 to go after the first lap. Coming around this time will show 17 to go. It's a psychology check. You've done London, you've done major championship marathons as well. You've got to do A to B, taking a few sights and sounds on the way, the atmosphere of the course. Jenny Nesbitt just having a bit of a dialogue with her fellow racer at the front there. It's too quick. Where are they? Yeah, up here, hidden behind us. But of course, that's the big, I guess, psychological factor for these athletes to get up to speed with is dealing with the loop factor.
Yeah, a few athletes in press conference who worked their way through the distances said, well, it's only like a 10,000 metres. You come around at the end of lap one and you've got 20 more to go. So they're well used to the metronome nature of training and racing. And Mo Farah, uniquely, can do a 20-mile run on the interior of a track around the football pitch on the middle of the track, open changing direction. So if you can just disengage, the laps don't matter at all. So we're coming up to 17 minutes. We're looking at the British battle there with Lee Partridge in the long black sleeves. Step 12 in the long black jacket. Nancy Gelagat, Ali Dixon and Jennifer Nesbitt are the three red-vested athletes doing the pacemaking. Ali Dixon doing it from the middle of the pack, I noticed.
Experience because she's covering up by a couple of athletes to save herself from the worst of the conditions at the front. But Jen Nesbitt, I was taking that front. But Eddie Partridge looking strong in his early stages. Big day for her household, of course, as her partner Ben Connor makes his power of debut in the men's race a little bit later on.
And the deal is, whoever has the worst run has to drive home.
That's a derby. Yeah.
Whoever has the worst run has to pay the hotel car park.
She's just more expensive than the effect of the derby, I believe. This neck of the woods.
Interesting choice of hat with Christmas coming up, isn't it? For Lily Partridge there, the old Nordic look.
Yeah, how long will that last? That's the question. There's Lily Partridge there from Australia with the cap on and the gloves. To the right shot, it's actually Cochran in the centre of step 12. Well, that is the full-on wet weather look, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look, isn't it?
Yeah. But with options to reduce the forecast, the percentage of rain goes down on the BBC forecast. That's Helen Davis.
Over 40.
Bridget Kloska for a moment. Again, very helpful of the organisers to us. Having the same kind of sponsored kit, same disposed of Kloska and Chet and Getty, as you can see. Bridget Kloska is trying to give them some of her winter gear. Off go the gloves.
So with 19 minutes in, the lap indicator moves to 17 laps to go. 2.6 laps completed as they go under the gantry this time. Looking good, ladies, and on schedule as they go in front of the Crowdies, which is all we have. We've got John Ridgeon here, the IAAF, the World Athletics Chief Executive, who's our only spectator, but I think he's on a working day. What did he do?
Sure on that one, Rob.
Answers
Gloves
on a postcard.
Okay. Gloves are a bit of a mixed blessing in weather like this. I mean, they're good at the start, but, you know, once they get wet, they're not much use to you. They certainly don't keep your hands warm. And then the question is, you know, are you going to take a spare pair with you? You can't take a pair from somebody on the side. That would be a system. So I'm not surprised. And I think that was Koskai getting rid of her arm warmers as well. So Koskai not bothered at all by the temperature, it seemed. So here we are at the drink station. There's one drink station per lap. Each of the athletes have their own table. Of course, in a normal race, the athletes have drinks every 5 kilometres, the elite athletes. That's where they can put their special drinks. This time there's one drink station per lap. So once every 2.15k or so. So then the question is, are you going to grab your drinks every lap? I think probably unnecessary. And certainly at 9 degrees, you're going to be sweating much, much less than if it were a hot day. So much less need for hydration on a day like this, I would say.
Yes, interesting. I mean, the golden rule is by the time you start to feel thirsty, it's already too late. But it'll be interesting to see as we get towards the business end of this race who is going for the drinks on every single circuit. Remember, if you're just joining us, it's 2.15k, 19.5 times. 5:09. Now, that explains why there's been a splinter in this lead group. They went through the first 5k in just inside 16.5. So they were on course for just outside, what is it, sort of high 217s. And I think that may be the reason why we've really seen a 5:09 and why so many of the women in that big group have just dropped off the back. Sarah Hall, she's gone out with her pacemaker. I think that's Sandra Fellis-Tui. And she did run so well, Hall, for that low 222s, 5th in Berlin, 6th on the US all-time list. And she formed Sarah Hall. We'll keep an eye on her. She ran 68.18 in Eugene on the 20th of August, so she's clearly in good shape. and determined to cause a little wave here after missing out in the US trials. Siedat'Live's an interesting athlete, unbelievable, still going strong at the age of 43. She's running well at the moment with her own pacemaker, but it's Koskay, Ruth Chepngetich, and we mentioned Ashete Bakera, 20 marathons, 12 podium finishes, a really consistent performer. Talking about the athlete on the left of picture there with the white vest. Those three with the pacemakers, and then there's a little gap back to the rest of that lead group. So that 5:09 has done a little bit of damage to the leading pack, but we've got the world record holder against the world champion with a very, very talented Ethiopian in the mix. Keep your eye out for Vivian Chariot as well. She's experienced enough to run her own pace in the early stages. Dare I say it, Mara, it's brightening up a touch, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, on that shot, it looks like the rain has eased off a little bit. I think it's definitely eased off compared to just before the start, for sure, and a little bit of sun peeking through the trees there. I was out running yesterday, and there were a lot of slippery fallen leaves on the ground, and I did wonder if that would be a problem for the athletes today. Of course, this is the first time this London Marathon has ever been held in the autumn here in London. I expect the organisers will have swept the course before the start, but of course they can't do that while the runners are underway on this multi-lap course. We could later on, of course, Rob, see athletes being lapped. 19 laps plus a little bit extra, and 2.15k per lap. So I think in the latter stages that could well be a possibility.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because we had a very useful brief from Hugh Brasher, didn't we, earlier in the week? I know you and I were both listening in on that one. And I did ask Hugh whether they had spoken to the athletes about the etiquette of being lapped. I mean, I guess it's not like being on a track where you're looking for the inside lane, and you know, if you hear somebody coming through, you automatically out until lane 2 or 3. There should be a fair amount of space around them, but it's absolutely possible and probable that with so many laps, you could easily have an athlete on for a PB mid 220s, if the likes of Bridget Koskay or Ruth Chepngetich is on for the women's only world record. Multiple women are going to get lapped. And the other element here, Mara, which again might sound like a silly question, but you're in a good position to answer this from an elite perspective, although you never ran the London doing 19.5 circuits. Although many of these women will be metronomic with their pace and their judgment, will it be difficult for them to remember what lap they're actually on? Because I know we've got a leaderboard which they can look to check how many laps is next to their name, or will they be judging this purely on the clock and they'll instinctively know?
This is a really interesting question. I was asking it myself when I was preparing for commentary. Do we stick with the traditional mile splits, 5k, 10k, 15k splits, or do you count by laps? I mean, one lap is 2.15k thereabouts. That really is a meaningless distance for these athletes. All of them will do most of the in miles or kilometres, and typically in a marathon, 5k splits is what you're looking out for. So, and there are on the finish gantry, there are lap counters. We're told there will be a bell on the penultimate lap. So I'm not sure that the athletes will be paying too much attention to the laps. Of course, they're running in a clockwise direction, which is different to on the track where you're running anti-clockwise. So a little bit different, even though many of them will be familiar with track racing.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, I hadn't really thought about that, because you're automatically thinking in laps that you're leaning to your left when you go around the home straight, but it's the other way round.
On that shot there, Rob, you could see 16 kilometres, 2 miles, 6 miles, 14 miles there, 14k. So quite plenty of scope for confusion. So I think these athletes will have thought about this beforehand and figured out what they're going to pay attention to and what they're not. And they could be just simply using their watches as well. See them right on the blue line there, not wasting any distance. This lap format we have seen quite recently in Prague on the September, where a women's only half marathon world record was set, subject to ratification. That was 16.5 laps of a 1.3k loop course.
Yes, different times requiring different skills, and remembering where you are in terms of the overall race is of vital importance. I agree with you. On the radar because they should in theory most of the way round know exactly how far they've got to go, and this is looking good from the point of view of watching a wonderful duel.
Joyce Smith there, winner of the very first London Marathon, one of the British legends and pioneers of female marathon running.
And this shows you how far the sport has come. A winning time, 2:29:57. I mean, that's a brilliant time for back in 1981, but it's indicative of just how quickly the sport has moved on. And do you know what, Mara? We certainly didn't think that we'd see this record broken for quite some time to come. She held on to it for well over a decade. It was hard to believe that day what Paula ran, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. 2:15:25. I mean, that was back 2003, 20 years ago now. I mean, she had run under 2:20 several times, had male pacemakers, and of course nobody near it. The nearest person was Mary Kaitani, 2:17:01 in 2017. It was in it to bits, taking some 80 seconds off Paula's record. So I have to say, on that shot, you can see the bright pink shoes that all these athletes are wearing. These shoes have contributed to Koskai's record. She wore a version of the Nike Vapor Flies in breaking that record. So in the last couple of years, really have transformed distance running and caused quite a bit of controversy as well. Some people in favour of them. They make you go faster. They're the inevitable advancement of technology. But others really worrying for the sport and what it means in terms of meaningful comparison with previous results, what it means in terms of, is running now purely a human endeavour, or is it a mixture of human and technology? So a lot of controversy. Of course, the other brands all catching up now. A lot of them have brought similar shoes onto the market. Not exactly the same because of patent laws. A lot of them now have these very high stack height shoes. The World Athletics' rules state that the stack height cannot be more than 40 millimeters, 4 centimeters. Carbon blade inside, only one blade. Those rules were set back in January. But of course, the shoes have been around since about 2016. And if you look at the number of sub-particular times in the last few years, it really shows the impact of these shoes. So, if we take sub-220s, in 2016 there was 1, in 2017 3, 2018 11, and 2019 12 performers. So that's performers, not performances, performers running sub 220. If we look a bit slower time, sub 226. In 2017, there were 56 athletes under 226. 2018, 86. 2019, 109. So it really has transformed the sport.
Yeah, it's the elephant in the room, and I guess another decent mile there inside 5:10, and Koskai is looking really good here with Chepngetich alongside her, and Valerie Jamil, one of the other women who's broken 2:20. She won Frankfurt last year. She's in that group. I noticed Vivian Chariot has drifted off that pace, although she's not running too far behind. Jamili's just on the right of picture there with the blue vest. It's such an interesting debate, and it has caused real controversy in the distance running community, Mara. I guess it's a balancing act between what counts as natural, improvements as technology just gradually gets better. What's an acceptable increment, and what's changing the landscape? I mean, Hugh Brasher made a good point that when his father won the steeplechase in 56, he was wearing titanium spikes. And at stages we moved from watching records on cinder tracks to watching records, on the modern surface, and now we've got Mondos. So I guess it's a question of, is this a natural progression of technology, or is the curve getting to the point where it's beginning to look like it's impacting greater than it should do?
Oh, there's no question that it's impacting results. So in the women's marathon, estimates of the difference these shoes can make is about 3 minutes for elite women. So, for example, athlete A, two athletes who are, let's say athlete A is a 2:20 runner, athlete B is a 2:21 runner. Athlete B goes and puts these shoes on, runs 2:18. It can influence results of races. So now, Koskai's 2:14.04. How do you make sense of that? Nobody got close to Paula's record. If somebody got close, we would expect it to be seconds chipped off. But to knock off 80 seconds, you kind of have to recalibrate. I think you need a pre-blade shoes set of information in your head and a post set of information shoes in your head, because otherwise meaningful comparisons over time are quite difficult. Of course, as you said, titanium spikes, track surfaces, things do evolve, but in a relatively small way. I think that the key here is regulation by World Athletics. You can't stop the advancement of technology. These shoes are here to stay. This is the new world of distance running. But how World Athletics regulates them really is key to the impact it has. They've effectively frozen the status quo until after the Tokyo Olympics. They've also established a scheme in which all elite athletes can have access to any shoe they want. So they're trying to ensure universal access at elite level. The athletic shoe availability scheme, that is. It was interesting in the men's elite press conference. Kenenisa Bekele, sadly withdrawn with an injury. He said he's had difficulties. He's had little injuries with his lower limb, his calf. He didn't really settle into the shoes that well, and that's an example of the fact that some athletes respond very well to the shoes, others don't respond so well. I think it's fair to say Koskai and Kipchoge respond very well to these shoes. Bekele perhaps less so. And he said he'd